If I had known that walking into my garage at 2:30 on a Tuesday afternoon would flip my entire world upside down, I would have called in sick, driven somewhere far, and let the universe do its damage without me having a front row seat. But instead, I did what I always do. I followed the routine. I got home early from the county permit office because the server went down again, and with no digital access to plans or zoning maps, the director waved us off for the day. I wasn't expecting to see anyone at the house. Lauren's shift wasn't over until 7, and the kids were at their after-school robotics club until 5. I thought I'd get a couple hours of silence, maybe finally fix the door on the overhead storage I'd been ignoring for 6 months. That garage had become my quiet place, the one spot in the house that hadn't turned into a cluttered battlefield of toys, bills, and passive-aggressive notes about dishes. The garage door creaked open with that annoying grind I kept promising to grease, and I stepped into the space expecting to see the same thing I always saw: old paint cans, forgotten gym equipment, and my lonely toolbox. Instead, I saw her car. That white Subaru she was so proud of because it handles curves like butter. I stood there for a second, confused. I hadn't seen it in the driveway, and I sure as hell didn't remember her saying anything about being home early. I walked in, slow and quiet. You know that instinct you get when something's just wrong? That low hum in the back of your neck? That was already buzzing. There were two things that immediately didn't sit right. First, the passenger door of her car was cracked open, like someone had gotten out in a hurry. Second, there were 2 plastic coffee cups on the workbench, and they weren't from the local place Lauren liked. They were from Perch Brew downtown, a place across the city that we never went to together. It's where people went to pretend they were deep, sit on mismatched furniture, and overpay for burnt espresso. I picked one up and noticed it had a lipstick mark, bright red, the exact shade Lauren wore when she had those rare girls' nights out that I used to encourage just so she could decompress. The other cup had a smudge of what looked like chewing tobacco on the lid. That wasn't hers. That wasn't mine either. My jaw tightened. I didn't call out. I don't know why. I just moved forward, past the workbench, toward the interior door that leads into the mudroom. That door was unlocked. We always locked it. Always. I stepped into the house, hearing nothing but the quiet hum of the fridge and the faint tick of the wall clock. My boots were off, but there was a second pair on the mat. Work boots, heavy, mud-crusted, not mine. I didn't recognize them, but they were placed neatly next to her clogs, as if whoever took them off had done this before. That's when I heard it. Not voices, not footsteps. Music. Faint and unmistakable, Fleetwood Mac, Dreams. A song I used to joke about hating because she played it every time she wanted to clean the kitchen, but that she insisted was the soul of the 70s. The sound was coming from the basement. Now let me tell you something about our basement. It's finished, carpeted, has a TV, a couch, and shelves full of family board games. It's where we used to have movie nights with the kids. And apparently now it was where I was going to find out that my wife of 9 years had a hobby I never signed off on. I walked down the steps slow, each foot pressing into that carpet like it owed me something. I wasn't even breathing heavy. I felt cold. Too calm. Too focused. At the bottom, I saw the couch, Lauren's sweater draped over the side of it like she'd flung it off mid-laughter. Then I saw a jacket on the floor. A man's. Big. Faded blue. And then I heard her laugh. That laugh. The one I hadn't heard in months. The one that used to belong to late nights on the porch and warm Sunday mornings in bed. It was alive. Vibrant. Full. And it wasn't for me. She was laughing at something he said. His voice followed hers, low and confident, the kind of tone that doesn't apologize for being in someone else's house, married or not. I turned the corner, and I saw them. He was sitting on the couch like he belonged there, legs wide, relaxed, leaning into her like he'd done it 100 times. She was cross-legged next to him, still in her scrubs, but barefoot, with her hair pulled back loose and casual. They weren't touching, but they might as well have been. The space between them was too comfortable, too lived in. And on the coffee table in front of them, 2 slices of cake. From Mariette's. My birthday cake. The one she buys every year. It wasn't anyone's birthday. I didn't yell. I didn't say a thing. I just stepped forward until they noticed me. She turned first, and the color drained from her face so fast, it looked like someone turned off the power inside her. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. He turned next, slower, like he wasn't expecting a problem. When he saw me, he didn't flinch. Didn't apologize. just raised his eyebrows like I was interrupting something important. "Who are you?" I asked, voice low. He smirked. "You must be Dan." Lauren finally found her voice. "Wait, why are you home?" It was that sentence that broke me. Not Dan. I can explain. Not, it's not what it looks like. Just confusion about my presence. Like I was the one out of place. I took a breath. Long, steady. "Garage door's broken," I said. "Was coming to fix it. But looks like the whole house is broken." She stood up, barefoot on the carpet, reaching for me like we could still pretend this wasn't what it clearly was. "It's not, he just came over. You were just laughing over my cake." I cut her off. "You were just sitting on our couch, in the house I pay for, bringing some into the one place I thought we were safe." He stood up then, and I almost welcomed it. I wanted him to do something stupid. He didn't. He grabbed his jacket and walked toward the stairs like it was his right. As he passed me, he said, "You should have seen this coming, man." I clenched my fists but didn't swing. I knew that if I did, I'd lose more than just a marriage. He left. The door upstairs opened, then slammed. Silence again. Lauren stood there shaking, trying to piece together some version of the truth that didn't sound as hollow as the lie I'd already lived through. "Dan." I don't know what to say. That was the last sentence she spoke before I walked past her, grabbed the 2 slices of cake, walked them over to the kitchen, and dropped them into the trash. No yelling. No crying. Just finality. I didn't ask who he was. I didn't care yet. What I did care about was that I had to figure out what to do next. Because if I stayed quiet, I'd never respect myself again. The next day felt like walking around in someone else's life, except everything still smelled like my house. I woke up on the couch, still dressed from the day before, with the taste of betrayal thick in my mouth and the stink of lies still hanging in the air. Lauren was already gone when I opened my eyes, probably left early to avoid the fallout. I didn't chase her. I didn't even move for the first 30 minutes. I just sat there and stared at the ceiling, remembering how she looked when I walked into that basement. Comfortable. Relaxed. Like she'd done it before. And something told me that wasn't the first time he'd been in my house, on that couch, sharing laughs with her over cake from my favorite bakery. By noon, I was ready to find out who he was. I didn't have a name, but I didn't need one. That work jacket he left behind had a stitched-on badge with a company logo and a first name, Trevor. I searched the company online, small-time HVAC and plumbing outfit. I called them and asked if Trevor was working on a project in my neighborhood. The lady on the phone told me she couldn't give out that information. I told her my unit was leaking coolant and it was urgent. She transferred me to scheduling. I gave my address and faked a concern about a service call from yesterday that I hadn't ordered. When she asked for more details, I gave her the badge number on the jacket and pretended I just wanted to verify he was a legit worker. She confirmed. Trevor Holt. Assigned to a property 2 streets down from mine, but she didn't seem surprised when I mentioned my address. "Oh yeah, I think he mentioned to stop over there too," she said casually, like she wasn't giving away the clue that was going to change everything. That was it. I knew his name. Trevor Holt. Now I had something to work with. I pulled up social media. Didn't take long. He wasn't smart enough to hide. His profile picture was taken at a house party, shirt half unbuttoned, beer in one hand, arm around someone's wife, just not mine. Yet, his timeline was full of trash. Cars he couldn't afford, gym mirror selfies, posts about grinding and staying real. Typical clown with nothing to show but his reflection. Then I hit gold. A picture taken 2 weeks ago, him standing in a driveway with Lauren's car in the background. My car wasn't there. Of course not. I was at work. I zoomed in, checked the timestamp, checked the surroundings. That was my house. Not just my neighborhood. My house. They didn't even try to hide it. I felt something break inside me, but I didn't scream. I didn't punch the wall. I didn't throw my phone. I got a notebook from the kitchen drawer, the one we used to keep grocery lists on, and I started writing. Names. Dates. Places. Times I remembered Lauren saying she was picking up extra shifts. Times I was out late for meetings or city council votes. I matched those up with any post I could find from Trevor. At least 5 overlaps in the past 3 months. Probably more. But that was enough. That was a pattern. And I knew what I had to do next. I printed every screenshot, every message thread between them I could find on the home computer. Turns out Trevor wasn't just dumb in public, he was careless in private. Their chats were open on Lauren's email app because apparently she thought her iCloud password was some kind of state secret. They talked about meeting in the basement, about how she missed his laugh. About how she didn't feel alive anymore and how I was too stable to understand her. That one made me laugh. Too stable. I took care of everything. The house. The bills. The kids. But stability, I guess, isn't exciting when you're chasing ego boosts from some neighborhood tech with biceps and no future. The next thing I did wasn't smart, but it was necessary. I got in the car and drove 2 streets over to the address I got from the HVAC company. I parked across from a white one-story house with a sagging porch and a red truck in the driveway. I waited. Around 4, Trevor pulled in. He didn't see me. He had a duffel bag over his shoulder and walked like a guy who thought the world owed him a round of applause just for showing up. I stayed long enough to watch him go inside, then drove back home before I did something that would put my name in the paper. When Lauren came home around 7, I was already sitting at the kitchen table with the folder of printed evidence. She walked in, saw me, saw the folder, and froze. "What's that?" she asked, eyes narrowing. "Read it," I said. She pulled up a chair slowly, opened the folder, and started flipping. At first, she tried to act confused, then defensive. Then she just went quiet. She knew there was no out. I didn't say anything for a while. I let the pages speak for me. After a few minutes, she pushed the folder away like it was toxic. "Dan, I never meant for it to go this far," she started, voice soft. "Then where exactly did you mean for it to go?" I asked. She looked away. "I don't know. You brought him into my house. Into our basement. While our kids were at school. You laughed with him. You ate my cake with him. You let him wear his boots on our rug. You think I care what you meant to do?" She started to cry. I didn't move. "I wasn't happy," she whispered. "I wasn't either. But I didn't bring someone else into it." Silence filled the room, thick and bitter. I stood up, walked to the sink, and turned on the tap. I rinsed my hands slowly, dried them, and looked at her one last time that night. "I'm not done yet," I told her. "But you should be." And then I walked upstairs, not because I didn't want to see her cry, but because I knew I had work to do. Revenge doesn't plan itself. The next few days passed like I was living behind a sheet of glass, watching everything but not really part of it. I went to work, I came home. I nodded along with small talk from coworkers, and I answered emails like nothing had happened. But the truth was always sitting there, just behind my eyes, waiting to push through. At home, Lauren kept her distance. She didn't try to talk to me again, and I didn't make any moves either. The air in our house was quiet in a way that had nothing to do with peace. It was the silence of 2 people who knew the game was up but hadn't figured out the final score. She didn't sleep in our bed anymore. She moved to the guest room without a word, and I let her. Every time I walked past that door, I remembered the folder on the kitchen table and how her hands trembled when she opened it. I wasn't just angry. I was insulted. Not because she cheated, that was enough on its own, but because of how carelessly she did it. In our house. With someone she thought I'd never notice. Like I was too busy with work or too dull to see the signs. I kept thinking about the things I had ignored. The random schedule changes. The sudden girls' nights that didn't match up with any texts from her actual friends. And the way she used to smile when I asked how her shift went, but never looked me in the eye when she answered. 3 days after I showed her the evidence, I told her we were going to talk. Not whisper. Not dodge. Talk. She sat across from me in the living room with her legs crossed, her arms folded like she was bracing for an attack. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw anything. I asked her one question. "Why am?" She blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" I kept my voice flat. "You had options. You could have talked to me. You could have ended things before stepping out. But you didn't. You chose some guy with dirt under his nails and nothing to offer you but bad decisions. So again, why am?" She hesitated, then gave the kind of answer that makes you feel like you're watching someone shrink right in front of you. "Because he made me feel noticed." I leaned back and stared at her. "So did the guy who brought you flowers on your lunch breaks? Or the one who coached our kids' soccer team with you? Because you know I saw those messages too. This wasn't one mistake, Lauren. This was a pattern. Don't insult me by pretending it was one connection gone wrong." Her face went red, not from embarrassment but from being caught without an excuse. "I didn't plan for this," she said. "No one ever does," I replied, "but most people stop themselves before they burn everything down." She stood up like she needed the height to make her next words matter. "You weren't there for me." "Not really. You were always working, always distracted. You stopped asking me how I was doing. You just assumed I'd always be there because I always was." I stayed seated. "You're right. I did take things for granted. I thought you had enough self-respect to come to me before crawling into someone else's life behind my back." That was my mistake. The argument could have gone further. It could have exploded, but I cut it off. I told her we weren't going to keep dragging this out. I wanted answers, I got them. They were weak, but they were answers. Now it was my turn. That weekend, I went through every drawer, every closet, every cabinet. I wasn't looking for more proof. I was preparing. I boxed up her things. Not all of them, just enough to send a message. Clothes, bathroom products, her work shoes, and the framed photo of us from the trip to Florida, the one she always said was her favorite. I placed everything in the garage. Neatly. No drama. No destruction. Just organization. Then I called a locksmith. By Sunday night, the locks were changed. I didn't tell her until she tried to leave for her shift Monday morning and realized her keys didn't work. I heard the jingle, the pause, and then her steps back inside. "You changed the locks?" she asked, voice tight. "Yes," I said. "You can come and go, but from now on, you do it with a key I hand you. One that expires when I say so." Her jaw dropped slightly. "You can't just." "I can," I said. And I did. "Until we decide what happens next, this is how it works." She looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. Maybe she finally realized the position she'd put herself in. Or maybe she knew there wasn't anything left to fight for. She nodded once, left without another word, and didn't come back that night. Or the night after. The kids didn't ask much. I didn't say much. I told them Mom had taken some time away to clear her head. That was true enough. They were old enough to understand something was off, but young enough not to need the full story. I'd give it to them if they ever asked. I just hoped they never would. By the fourth day, I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't calm either, just focused. I had let the shock wear off, let the betrayal settle, and now all that was left was figuring out what to do with it. Sitting around and waiting for her to do something wasn't going to fix anything, and forgiving her just because we shared bills and kids felt pathetic. I had no interest in counseling, no need to hear another word about how she felt lost or wasn't thinking straight. That might have worked in some other story, but not in mine. She was thinking clearly enough to schedule time with that guy. She had enough awareness to cover her tracks, and she was sharp enough to make sure the kids were never around when he came over. You don't accidentally plan that much. I started with what I could control. I pulled out a legal pad and made 2 columns, hers and mine. Not just things, but accounts, passwords, names of people we knew, even routines we shared. It wasn't petty, it was strategic. If we were heading toward a split, I needed to know exactly where everything stood. After that, I changed all the passwords that were tied to anything I paid for. Streaming services, insurance, utilities, even the cloud storage we used for family photos. If she wanted access again, she'd have to ask for it. I wasn't deleting anything. I wasn't punishing her. I was just drawing lines, because clearly, the ones we had before didn't mean anything to her. Then came the real part. I needed to know how deep this went. Not just how many times she saw him, but how far she let it bleed into our lives. I remembered a weekend trip she took with her coworkers back in March, one she said was just a team-building event. That weekend I stayed home with the kids. I made frozen pizza, watched movies with them, and put them to bed while she networked. I pulled up the receipts. The hotel she booked wasn't the one her team stayed at. I knew that because I checked with the hospital's HR site. They posted photos of the retreat, complete with group shots in front of a hotel that wasn't the one on our credit card statement. So I drove to the one she stayed at. Just 30 minutes out of town, one of those mid-range places with basic parking and keycard access. I asked the front desk if I could get a printout of the receipt from a past stay, claimed I was double-checking something for our taxes. They didn't ask questions. The invoice showed a 2-person suite, not a standard room. It had breakfast for 2 included. I didn't need to see more. I thanked the clerk, walked out, and sat in my car for 10 minutes without starting it. I just stared at the paper and thought about what else I hadn't seen. When I got home, I scanned it, added it to the file I was building. I already had screenshots, message logs, and dates that matched up with odd behavior. But now I had proof that it wasn't just something that happened once or never left the basement. That was the kind of lie people tell when they're hoping to salvage something. She had put effort into it. This was a second life she was running, and she had convinced herself it was manageable. That she could walk back into our house and pretend it hadn't cost anything. I waited until the kids were out with my sister for the evening. Then I sent her a message, "Be home by 8. I want to talk." She didn't reply right away, but when I heard the car pull in at 7:56, I knew she wasn't going to dodge it. She walked in, quieter than usual. No attempt at a smile, no excuse about traffic or work. Just straight to the point. You want to hawk? She said, standing halfway into the living room. I nodded toward the couch. Sit. She sat, hands in her lap, waiting for the explosion. I didn't give it to her. You've been lying to me for at least 4 months, I said, staring straight at her. Probably longer. She opened her mouth, but I held up a folder. This is everything. Your hotel invoice. Your texts. The photos with your car in his driveway. You didn't just slip up, Lauren. You made a choice. She didn't deny it. That might have made it easier to hate her, but instead, she just looked like someone who knew the sentence was coming and had already accepted it. I don't know what to say, she muttered. You don't need to say anything, I told her. I'm not here to argue. I'm not here to work it out. I'm here to tell you how this is going to go. She straightened up slightly, but her face stayed pale. You're going to start packing, I said. You'll take the stuff you need, not what you want. You'll stay with whoever it is you've been running to. I'm not interested in fixing this. I'm not interested in forgiving it. I'm filing next week. Her voice was small. What about the kids? We'll figure that out like adults, I replied. But you're not going to play house here while pretending it didn't happen. She stood up, hands shaking. Can we talk about this tomorrow? No, I said. You've had enough tomorrows. Lauren didn't leave that night. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just went into the guest room and shut the door. I stayed in the living room for another hour, not watching TV, not looking at my phone, just sitting there with my hands locked together and my jaw tight. I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe for her to say more, maybe for her to fight, but all she did was walk away like it was already over in her head. I could hear her moving around in the room, opening drawers, then stopping, probably realizing she hadn't thought far enough ahead to actually pack. That told me everything. She didn't think it would end. She thought there would be a chance to explain, negotiate, maybe cry a little, and have me bend. She didn't prepare for the moment where I looked her in the face and said it was done. The next morning, she was already gone before I woke up. No note, no message, just her side of the garage cleared out. Her clothes, her toiletries, some framed photos that used to sit on the hallway table all gone. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel satisfied. It was like walking back into a house that had been robbed. Everything technically still in place, but you knew something had been taken that wouldn't be replaced. I made coffee, ate in silence, and stared at my calendar, wondering how many more nights I'd have to explain this to the kids before it just became part of the story. She called me later that afternoon, said she needed to talk. I told her to meet me at the park down the street, somewhere neutral, somewhere the kids wouldn't overhear. When I got there, she was already sitting on a bench, looking tired, but not broken. I sat down beside her without a greeting, gave her a moment to say what she brought me there to say. I moved in with a friend, she started. Not him. I ended that. I nodded slowly, not because I believed her, or because I cared who she was living with, but because I knew she wanted acknowledgement. I wasn't ready for any of this, she continued. I know that doesn't change what I did, but I need to say it out loud. You should have said something before you did it, I said, eyes on the trees across the path. I know. I thought about it a lot, but I didn't know how to start that conversation. You started plenty of others. With him. She took that in without responding. I didn't feel good about saying it, but I wasn't going to sugarcoat anything to make her feel better. I had been honest from day one. She was the one who decided that honesty had an expiration date. I don't want to fight about it, she said. I just want to know what you're thinking. About the divorce. About everything. I'm moving forward with it, I said. That's not up for debate. I already talked to a lawyer. I'm not going to drag this out, but I'm not playing the passive role either. I have evidence. I have everything documented. We'll split what we need to. We'll sort the rest through mediation. She nodded, rubbing her hands together like she couldn't feel her fingers. What about the kids? They stay with me, I said plainly. You can see them. I'll never keep them from you. But their home doesn't change. They've already lost enough. I wasn't planning to fight you on that, she replied. I couldn't even look them in the eyes the night I packed. I knew what I did. I knew what it cost. We sat there for a long time after that. No yelling. No emotional outburst. Just two people going through the formalities of ending something that had already died. Eventually, she asked the question I had been expecting. Do you hate me? I thought about it. No. Hating you would mean I still wanted something from you. I don't. But I don't respect you anymore. And that's not something I can fix. Her shoulders slumped a bit. That hit her harder than anything else I'd said. I was lonely, she whispered. I know that doesn't justify it. I was lonely too, I said. Difference is, I stayed. There was nothing else to add. The conversation had nowhere left to go. She stood up, wiped her face with the sleeve of her jacket, and looked at me one last time. I'll sign whatever papers you send. Just tell me when. I will. And then she walked away, back toward her car, back toward whatever new life she was going to have to build out of the pieces she broke. 2 weeks after that meeting in the park, the divorce papers were signed. No courtroom, no drawn-out hearings, no more delays. She agreed to everything we had discussed. The house stayed in my name, the kids stayed with me, and the only thing she asked for was to keep her car and a few personal items. I didn't argue. At that point, I didn't care about objects or money. The damage had already been done, and dragging it out wouldn't fix anything. I just wanted it wrapped up before the weight of it started leaking into every corner of my life. The kids didn't ask for explanations the way I feared they would. I think they already knew something was wrong before I ever said anything. They're not clueless. They saw how distant things had become between us, how the good mornings turned into nods and the conversations dried up. I kept it simple with them. I told them that sometimes people who care about each other grow apart, and when that happens, it's better to be honest than to keep pretending. I didn't talk about betrayal. I didn't talk about Trevor. That was between her and me. I wanted to make sure my kids didn't carry around guilt or confusion for something they didn't cause. Lauren came by once that week to see the kids. I stayed out of the way, stayed in the garage. She kept her visit short. They talked in the living room, then she left without saying a word to me. That was fine. There was nothing left to say. I had already said everything that mattered. I'd made my decision, and she knew the door she walked through was one she couldn't return from. I started going back to the gym again. I wasn't trying to reinvent myself or chase some cliché about becoming a better version of me. I just needed something to do with the hours that used to belong to her. I started cooking meals instead of ordering takeout, not because I was suddenly trying to impress anyone, but because it gave me control over something. The house stayed clean. The routine stayed in place. I told myself I was doing it for the kids, but the truth is, I was doing it for my own sanity. If I let things fall apart just because my marriage did, it would feel like she took everything from me. I wasn't about to give her that. People started finding out slowly. Some through word of mouth, others through Lauren. I didn't go around explaining myself. When they asked, I told them we were divorced, and that was enough. A few friends tried to pry, to get details, maybe looking for drama or hoping to feel better about their own lives by comparing. I gave them nothing. I had no interest in becoming the topic of gossip. What happened between me and her was already painful enough without turning it into a public story. One evening, about a month after she moved out, I got a message from Trevor. It was short. No apology. Just some smug one-liner about how he hoped we were both happier now. I didn't respond. I blocked the number. If he thought I'd waste energy replying to someone like that, he didn't understand me at all. Whatever connection he thought he had with her wasn't my concern anymore. She had made her choices, and now she could live with them. Lauren tried once to talk again. She sent a long message, one of those emotionally loaded texts that bounced between regret and nostalgia. She said she missed the way things used to be. She said she wished she could undo what she did. She asked if maybe one day we could talk again, not about getting back together, just to clear the air. I didn't reply, not because I hated her, but because I meant what I said when I told her I was done. Closure doesn't come from one more conversation. It comes from knowing you did everything you could before it broke. And once it broke, you didn't run backward. Some nights, after the kids are in bed, the house gets too quiet. That's the only time it hits me hard. Not the betrayal itself, that's old now. It's the realization that I spent years with someone who knew how to lie to my face and sleep beside me like nothing was wrong. That part doesn't go away easy, but I remind myself that I'm not stuck anymore. I'm not wondering where she is when she's late. I'm not watching her eyes when she talks, trying to figure out if she's telling the truth. I'm not living with someone who made me feel invisible in my own home. Now I get up every morning knowing what my life looks like, and that matters more than whatever false sense of comfort I had when I was still holding on. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not bitter, but I'm sharper. I'm more honest with myself. I stopped pretending that love is enough when respect isn't there. We still coordinate things for the kids. Civil, polite, short. There's no friendship there, no shared memories worth dusting off. Just the reality of two people who built something, broke it, and moved on. That's where it ends. Not with some big moment or dramatic turnaround. Just a clean cut. A decision made and followed through. And I can live with that. I sleep fine. I look my kids in the eye and know I did the right thing. That's what matters now.